The Architect's Revenge, a triple maternity against the empire of her ex-husband. High-level drama alert. Before you dive into this epic tale of resilience and social resurrection, hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. Ava Sterling's life is about to prove that a mother doesn't just survive, she anchors. Chapter 1. The Signature of Betrayal. The conference room overlooking Park Avenue reeked of polished mahogany and cold betrayal. A sleek Mont Blanc pen rested between the trembling fingers of Ava Sterling, an architect on the rise, while her lawyer whispered, "All we need is your signature." Across the glittering table, her soon-to-be ex-husband, Marcus Thorne, leaned back in his chair, adjusting the cuff of his bespoke suit. The Patek Philippe on his wrist ticked louder than her own heartbeat. He didn't look at her. Not once. Outside, New York City was shrouded in a thick November fog, the lights of Midtown blurred by the relentless drizzle. Ava's reflection in the window was a pale ghost, 6 months pregnant, clinging to the last shred of dignity she could afford. Marcus's voice cut the silence, soft yet razor-sharp. "Let's keep it clean, Ava. I have a flight to Geneva this afternoon." He didn't mention the reason. Everyone already knew. The tabloids had been whispering about the Vogue cover model, Sienna Reed, for months. Ava pressed the pen to the paper. Her signature bled onto the white page like an open wound. A single tear fell onto the ink, blurring the word divorce. The rustle of her lawyer collecting papers felt like nails in a coffin. Marcus rose, sliding his custom iPhone into his pocket. "Take care," he said casually, like someone dismissing a waiter. She wanted to scream. Instead, she smiled. The kind of smile people use when they've lost everything and can't afford to crumble. When the door closed behind him, she exhaled, shaky, silent, final. The city outside didn't stop. Taxis blared. Sirens wailed. Life went on. But for Ava, time stopped right there, in that room full of contracts and ghosts. Her lawyer hesitated. "Do you need me to call a car?" Ava shook her head. "No, I'll walk." She tucked the signed documents into her worn leather tote bag, grabbed her old MacBook, and stepped out into the damp drizzle. The rain tasted of metal, almost bitter. She walked past the luxury storefronts, Tiffany, Chanel, Hermes, each window reflecting a version of the life that used to be hers. Her hand brushed against her swollen belly, feeling a faint kick. "We'll be fine," she whispered to the baby. "I promise." Then, across the street, the flashes erupted. A photographer shouted, "Mrs. Thorne, is it true he's marrying Sienna next month?" Ava froze. For the first time, she realized the divorce wasn't an ending. It was the beginning of her public humiliation. And the entire world was already watching. Chapter 2. The Fire Baptism and the Triple Alarm. The wedding photos flooded every newsfeed before Ava finished her morning coffee. Marcus Thorne, the visionary tech CEO, and Sienna Reed, the runway darling, beamed beneath a crystal chandelier inside the Plaza Hotel. The captions read like poetry to the cruel, the power couple of the year. Sienna's gown glittered with hand-sewn crystals. Marcus's tuxedo was perfectly pressed, his eyes full of pride. They looked like the kind of people the world adores, untouchable, brilliant, and heartless. Ava sat in her small rented room in the East Village, wearing an oversized sweatshirt that barely covered her stomach. The glow of her old MacBook Air cast a cold light on her tired face. Every tabloid headline felt like a slap. A knock on the door broke her trance. It was Stella Davies, her college roommate, now a sharp-tongued legal aide who refused to let Ava drown in silence. Stella carried 2 Starbucks coffees and a brown paper bag. "I brought breakfast," Stella said softly. "And the news. Have you seen it?" Ava nodded, her voice a bare whisper. He married her, the same week our divorce papers were finalized. Stella exhaled. Classic Marcus. He thinks this makes him untouchable, but the law doesn't forget that easily. He still owes prenatal coverage under the marital health clause. Ava managed a weak smile. He'll find a way around it. Then we'll find a way to corner him, Stella said, placing the coffee in her hand. Drink up. You're keeping 3 lives alive now. Ava looked down at her belly, feeling a gentle movement beneath her palm. 3 tiny heartbeats dependent on her. Interactive question. What would you do in Ava's place? Would you accept defeat silently or pursue Stella's aggressive legal strategy? Comment with your action plan. She couldn't sleep that night. The rain hammered against the window, constant and cruel. She scrolled through her phone again. Photos of the wedding from the same ballroom where Marcus had once told her he loved her. The comments below were merciless. Upgrade achieved. That poor ex-wife must be fuming. The next morning, she went to a part-time editing job at a small media agency in the financial district. During lunch, she sat on a bench facing the One World Trade Center, biting into a cold sandwich. Her reflection shone faintly in the building's glass. Tired eyes, messy hair, a body both fragile and strong. She pulled out a notebook and began to write. I will rebuild, even if it kills me. Just as she snapped the notebook shut, her phone vibrated. A text message from an unknown number popped up. You should stop showing up where you're not wanted. He's moved on. You should too. No name. But Ava didn't need one. The words smelled of sienna, perfumed cruelty, wrapped in digital ink. She deleted the message and whispered, You'll see. When she stood up, the city felt different, colder, sharper, but alive. She could almost hear New York whispering its challenge, crumble or fight back. As she walked away, a headline flashed on the billboard in Times Square. Marcus Thorne and Sienna Reed on honeymoon in the Hamptons. Ava didn't stop to look. She just kept walking, her hand on her belly, her eyes forward. Because for the first time, revenge didn't feel like hatred. It felt like survival. Chapter 3. The Rain-Soaked Gentleman and the Medical Revelation. It was close to midnight when the last subway train rattled through the wet streets of Brooklyn. A city that never slept had turned gray and weary, much like Ava Sterling herself. Her shift at the editing studio had run late again, and when she emerged into the rain, the neon lights reflected in the puddles like broken dreams. She clutched her worn leather tote to her chest, her breath visible in the cool air. 6.5 months pregnant, exhausted and alone, she was surviving one day at a time. The train car was nearly empty. A man in a dark overcoat sat near the rear, reading something on his iPad. Ava slumped into a seat, massaging her swollen ankles. Midway across the Manhattan Bridge, the train jolted violently. A wheel hit a flat spot, and Ava's world tilted for a second. Pain tightened in her lower abdomen. "Oh no," she whispered, grabbing the seat. Before she could react, the boy in the rear was already up. He moved quickly, calm but focused. "You need air," he said in a firm voice. He shrugged off his coat and knelt beside her. "Breathe, slow and deep. I'm Ethan Miller." His tone was professional, reassuring. Someone used to taking control. The conductor stopped the train near a station. The rain was coming down harder. Ethan offered his umbrella, guiding her carefully. "You shouldn't be traveling alone this late," he said, as they waited for a taxi beneath the flickering lamppost. He asked no prying questions, passed no judgment on her trembling hands. He just stood there, holding the umbrella over both of them, letting the rain soak his shoulders. When the taxi arrived, he helped her inside. "Hospital?" the driver asked. Ava nodded weakly. Ethan pulled a business card from his pocket and pressed it into her hand. "If they won't admit you, call this number. Dr. Chen at New York Presbyterian." He owes me a favor. Ava blinked, confused. Why are you helping me? Ethan hesitated. Because I've seen that look before. Someone trying to hold it all together. His voice softened. No one should have to fight alone at midnight. Before she could thank him, he closed the taxi door. The rain blurred his face as the cab pulled away, leaving him standing beneath the lamppost's glare, coatless and silent. At the hospital, they told her the contractions were stress-induced, false labor, but a warning. The nurse smiled kindly. You need rest, sweetheart, and someone looking out for you. Ava nodded, clutching Ethan's card. Ethan Miller, Miller Holdings. The name sounded familiar. A whisper of another world, one she thought she'd left behind. When she got home near dawn, the city was still wet and quiet. She placed the card on her nightstand beside her sonogram picture. 3 tiny heartbeats, 3 reasons to survive. Before drifting off, she opened her old laptop and Googled his name. The screen lit up with headlines. Ethan Miller, the solitary billionaire who disappeared after wife's death. Ava stared at the photo, his face in a tuxedo, standing next to a woman who looked carved by sunlight. Her stomach churned. The man who had helped her tonight wasn't just kind. He was powerful, and fate had just linked her life to his without either of them knowing it yet. The next morning, she sat in the waiting room of the community clinic in the East Village. The nurse finally called her name, and within minutes, Ava was lying on the exam table, eyes fixed on the monitor as the sonographer moved the cold gel over her skin. Things look very busy, the woman murmured with a slight smile. Ms. Sterling, did anyone tell you that you are expecting triplets? The words hit her like a thunderclap. Triplets? Ava's mouth went dry. Yes, 3, the nurse said, adjusting the screen. 3 tiny heartbeats flickered like miniature stars. You'll need close monitoring and a lot of rest. This kind of pregnancy is high risk. Ava's pulse raced. She was already struggling to pay rent and stay healthy. Now she had 3 babies growing inside her. That night, a sharp pain seized her abdomen. She gasped, spilling her tea. Stella jumped up. Hospital now! Hours later, Ava sat in the hospital hallway, exhausted, with papers in her lap. Her phone vibrated with a new message from an unknown number. If you're smart, you'll stop dragging this out. He's not coming back for you. Sienna again. Then, a nurse approached with a clipboard. Ms. Sterling, you have a visitor. Ava frowned. A visitor? The nurse pointed to the glass doors. Standing there, in a gray suit and rain-damp hair, was Ethan Miller. He held a small bouquet of white lilies. Simple, understated. How did you know I was here? She asked as he approached. He smiled faintly. You said you might need that doctor's number. I thought I'd check if you actually called. And just like that, for the first time in months, Ava felt the world stop spinning. Chapter 4. The Triplets' Haven and the Pact of Respect. A week after her hospital scare, Ava tried to return to some version of normalcy. She worked from home for the agency, editing short videos on her old MacBook Air, pausing every few minutes to catch her breath. Her doctor had told her to rest, but she had rent to pay, and her insurance didn't cover much. That morning, she decided to walk to the bodega. Reaching the building lobby, she pressed the elevator button and waited. The door opened, and her heart froze. Inside was Sienna Reed. She looked even more unreal up close. Perfect hair, flawless skin, a designer coat that probably cost more than Ava's yearly rent. Beside her, a stylist carried garment bags and a young assistant. For a second, time stopped. Sienna's eyes swept over Ava's pregnant belly, and a smirk played on her lips. Oh, she said, her voice dripping with sugar. You're Ava, right? Marcus's ex? Ava nodded silently. Sienna stepped closer, whispering loud enough for the others to hear. You look radiant. I mean, For someone who's doing this alone. The elevator opened again, and Sienna stepped out, her perfume lingering like expensive poison. "Good luck, darling," she added, tapping her diamond ring against the railing before walking away. The humiliation stung deeper than any headline or whisper. Ava left the building and walked to a nearby Starbucks. She grabbed her notebook and wrote, "The pain doesn't kill you. It teaches you who you are." Just then, a black Mercedes S-Class pulled up near the curb. A familiar figure stepped out, holding a paper bag and an umbrella. Ethan Miller. He spotted her through the window, hesitated, then walked into the coffee shop. "May I?" he asked, indicating the empty seat across from her. "I had a meeting nearby," he said, setting down the bag. "And I thought you might need something other than hospital food." Inside the bag were muffins and herbal tea. "I saw the photos of your ex's wedding," Ethan added cautiously. "They looked expensive." Ava laughed for the first time in weeks, a dry, shaky sound. "Yeah, he's good at expensive." Ethan tilted his head. "Then maybe it's time you learned to be good at survival." The final blow from Marcus arrived in a letter, a financial settlement and non-disclosure agreement. He wanted to buy her silence for a modest sum. Ava read the clause about irreversible waiver of moral claims and felt the temptation drown her. That night, she received an anonymous text. "If you really cared about your babies, you'd stop embarrassing their father." Something inside Ava snapped. She tore the paper in half, then again, until the pieces fell like confetti. "He won't silence me," she said out loud. "Not this time." The next day, she and Stella sued Marcus for the triplets' full medical coverage, demanding the court compel him to pay for his negligence. The night of the delivery came at 2:47 a.m., with sharp, rhythmic pain. When Ava crumpled on the stairs, Ethan was there, at her door. "The nurse called me," he said swiftly. "You weren't answering your phone. Let's go." Hours later, Ava awoke in the recovery room. The world was silent. Then came a sound. 3 faint cries, delicate, yet real. Nina, Grace, and Eli were born. Ethan appeared beside her bed, his shirt wrinkled and eyes bloodshot. He held 3 tiny knitted caps. "They're perfect," he whispered. "Why are you doing all this for me?" Ava asked. Ethan hesitated, then said softly, "Because I've been where you are. I watched someone I love fight for life while everyone else turned away. I couldn't save her, but maybe this time I can help someone else." His honesty disarmed her. 2 days later, Ethan offered Ava a place to stay, a guest house on his family's property in Greenwich, Connecticut. Private, quiet, and with access to 24-hour medical care. "I can't accept charity." "It's not charity, it's logistics. If you say yes, I need rules, clear ones." Together, they hammered them out in the hospital cafeteria. She would pay what she could, when she could. She would remain independent, responsible for her professional decisions. No emotional obligations, no blurred lines. 2 days later, a black car collected her from the hospital. Charlotte Miller, Ethan's sister, met her at the door. "Welcome. We've set up the nursery." Ava walked in and froze. 3 bassinets sat side by side, sunlight pouring over the white curtains. It didn't feel like a stranger's house. It felt like safety. Chapter 5. The Shield of Public Sympathy. Spring slipped into New York like a sigh of relief. It had been nearly a year since that first night on the subway. The triplets were thriving. Nina, Grace, and Eli filled the house with music. But then, the photo that set everything on fire dropped. A grainy, out-of-focus shot of a man in an overcoat holding a tiny baby outside Presbyterian Hospital. Gossip sites identified the man as Ethan Miller and the woman as Ava Sterling, Marcus Thorne's ex-wife. The headline read, "Mercer's ex finds new fortune." Ethan came over to the guest house. "I've contacted my publicist. We'll issue a statement clarifying you are under medical care through my foundation." "I don't want pity," Ava snapped. Charlotte joined them. We'll announce the Miller Foundation is sponsoring neonatal care for single mothers. That reframes the story. It makes you a cause, not a scandal. The press release was professional, true, but the silence didn't stop. It just redirected. Marcus Thorne saw the news. "She's playing the victim card," he growled. Sienna, for her part, sneered. "Maybe she's better at this than you thought." Ava, holding the babies, looked out the window. Ethan was on the threshold. "You didn't ask for it," he whispered. "But you get to choose what happens next." Interactive question. Do you think Ava is wrong to use the social cause strategy to shield herself from the media, or is it a necessary move for survival? Share your ethical opinion. Months later, the Miller Foundation Gala was held. It was Ava's first public appearance. She was radiant, wearing an elegant black gown. Sienna Reed cornered her. "Well, if it isn't Mrs. Miller," she said, her voice brimming with fake sweetness. "I must say, Ethan, you have a type. Brave, broken women with big eyes." "You're right, Sienna," Ava said serenely. "It takes bravery to start over. You should try it sometime." Minutes later, the host called Ethan to the stage. "Tonight," he began, "I'm reminded that strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers through compassion, through courage, through rebuilding after the world discards you." He turned slightly, looking at Ava. "And tonight, I dedicate this moment to those who prove that dignity and grace are stronger than scandal." The audience erupted in applause. For the first time, the world wasn't laughing at her. They were applauding her strength. It was her quiet comeback, written one headline at a time. Chapter 6. The final battle for the narrative. The morning after the gala, the headlines were kind. But Ava's victories never came without a shadow. Marcus Thorne was suing Ava for partial custody of the triplets. "He's doing it to hurt me," Ava whispered. "He's never even seen them. Not once." Stella went into action. "It's a publicity stunt. He's trying to generate public goodwill before his company's IPO next quarter. If he looks like a devoted father, investors trust him more. He's using our children as PR props." "Yes, and we're going to make him regret it." In the courtroom, Marcus looked slick and charming. But when Stella presented the evidence, his confidence shattered. Emails showing Marcus's total lack of contact, unpaid medical bills, and most damning, a voicemail he'd left in anger months ago. "You think those kids are going to change anything? They're your problem, not mine," Marcus's lawyer objected. But the damage was done. The judge ruled full custody for the mother, with limited supervised visits pending review. Stepping out of the courthouse, a reporter shouted, "Mrs. Sterling, are you denying the children their father?" Ava paused, turned, and looked straight into the camera. "I am protecting them from what their father became." That clip played for days. It was the sound of a woman refusing to be a victim. 2 months later, Marcus went even further. Ethan discovered Marcus was trying to bond his debt-ridden company to a huge Langley Holdings acquisition deal. It was a trap to wash his debt using the Miller name. He's planning this. The gallery, the charity, everything. It was a lure. He's using the Miller name to wash his debt. Ethan and Ava acted fast. They leaked documents proving Marcus's financial fraud. At an investor dinner, Marcus's phone vibrated. The Wall Street Journal headline read, "Thorne Enterprises under investigation for financial misconduct." The color drained from his face. Ethan leaned in. "You built your empire on lies, Marcus. Consider this your eviction notice from my city." Chapter 7. Victory, Peace, and the New Beginning. The Marcus Thorne scandal collapsed. He sued Ava for defamation, claiming she had fabricated evidence. The trial was Marcus's last attempt to turn Ava into the villain. Stella presented the truth. A voice recording of Marcus was played. "She's too naive to understand numbers anyway." The defamation suit was dismissed. A week later, the Wall Street Journal published a statement from Marcus Thorne. I apologize to Ava Sterling Miller for my false claims and past conduct. She acted with integrity. I did not. Ava read the newspaper, folded it, and whispered, "That's the only signature of his I'll keep." A year later, Ava's life was the peace she'd craved. Ethan proposed in the garden where he'd given her the lilies. Instead of a diamond, he gave her a simple platinum band engraved with the initials NGE, Nina, Grace, Eli. They married with only 5 guests. At the annual Miller Foundation Gala, Ava made her debut as a wife. Marcus and Sienna, whose career had tanked, confronted her. "Still making scenes, I see," Marcus said. "I am thanking you for surviving you," Ava said, pulling out the original fraud documents. "You falsified this during our marriage. I kept it. The SEC has it now." The confrontation was the last the world witnessed. Ava's documentary, The Mothers Who Stayed, premiered to critical acclaim. She became the executive producer of the Netflix series, telling stories of women who refused to break. On the triplets' 3rd birthday, Ava was in her Greenwich home, by the fireplace. "You know what I want now?" she asked Ethan. "What?" "A foundation for single mothers. Real help. Housing, education, childcare. Something that changes lives, not just headlines. Then we'll build it together." Ava kissed him. She was no longer fighting. She was free. She and Ethan had turned pain into purpose, betrayal into love, and humiliation into a legacy. The story of Ava Sterling Miller is proof that sometimes survival is only the beginning. Call to action. If this story of an architect who designed her own happy ending inspires you, hit the like button, share this video, and tell us in the comments below. What is the strongest foundation you've ever had to build in your own life? Chapter 8. The Fire of the New Foundation. 5 years after the final confrontation at the gala, Ava Sterling Miller was no longer a scandal celebrity. She was a force for change. The documentary, The Mothers Who Stayed, was globally acclaimed, and Ava used her platform to launch the Compass Foundation, dedicated to providing housing, legal support, and professional mentorship to single mothers. The foundation's flagship project was The Haven, an affordable, self-sustaining housing complex in a developing neighborhood of Queens, New York, designed by young, ethical architects. It wasn't charity, it was an investment in dignity. The morning of the groundbreaking ceremony, the excitement was palpable. The triplets, Nina, Grace, and Eli, now 8 years old, zipped around energetically, dressed in small reflective vests and hard hats. Stella Davies, the former legal aid turned foundation chief legal officer, stood next to Ava, beaming. Ethan watched from the side, the pride in his eyes an anchor for Ava. "This place will be a base, Stella," Ava said, feeling the sacred weight of the golden shovel she held. "A place where women like me can catch their breath before they start running." But peace was fleeting. As Ava was about to thrust the shovel into the soil, an unmarked black car screeched to a halt. A man in an expensive suit, Mr. Grant, an attorney known for representing shady real estate interests, stepped out with a folder. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Miller." Grant's voice was polished and cold. "Your project is stalled." Ava frowned. "What does that mean?" "We have all the permits." "Indeed. But we have acquired the adjacent lot. And, according to an old easement, your planned underground renewable energy cabling crosses our new property without consent. My client demands a change to your entire structural design for The Haven." The move was obvious, a deliberate attempt to halt the project, to force the foundation to pay an exorbitant sum to buy peace. The murmurs in the crowd escalated into an anxious buzz. "Who is your client, Mr. Grant?" Ava asked, her voice low and dangerously calm. Grant smiled with familiar arrogance. "A discreet investor who wishes not to be identified." I'll only tell you that he has been watching your legacy with great interest." Ava needed no further hints. There was only one man whose resentment and desire for control transcended jail: Marcus Thorne. Though he was serving time for fraud, his contacts and dirty money were still his weapon. It was a low blow, an attempt to taint her triumph. Interactive question. If you were Ava, would you accept the stall to avoid a public scandal, or expose Marcus's sabotage immediately to the media? Comment with your attack strategy. Chapter 9. The Design Immune to Vengeance. The ceremony was cancelled. The euphoria turned into cold determination. That afternoon, the conference table at the Compass Foundation office was filled with blueprints and legal documents. Ethan sat, his brow furrowed. "It's a textbook tactic, Ava, trying to force you into a ransom payment. Do you want the Miller Holdings legal team to step in? We can crush him." "No, Ethan," Ava said firmly. "Marcus wants us to use your power, so he can headline that I'm hiding behind your money. This is my battle." She turned to Stella. "Stella, we need to find out who Grant's client is, but we're not going to fight in court. We're going to fight on the architectural blueprint." Ava, the silenced architect, engaged her mind. She recalled a crucial lesson learned in her darkest days: limitation forces creativity. She spent the night in her studio, not sleeping, but designing. It wasn't about finding an alternate route for the cables. It was about eliminating the need to cross Grant's property. The next morning, she gathered her architecture team. "The Grant Group has given us a limitation," Ava declared. "And a limitation is a gift. We are redesigning. I want every building in the Haven to be completely off the central grid. Solar power, urban wind turbines, and a battery storage system for every single unit. The Haven will not just be self-sustaining, it will be a microgrid immune to any external easement." The idea was brilliant, yet expensive and risky. It would mean a massive investment in technology. "The cost, Ava?" Stella asked. "The cost of dignity," Ava replied. "But we'll turn it into our biggest advantage. The microgrid will make the Haven a unique project in New York, attracting ethical investors and skyrocketing the entire concept's value." Chapter 10. The Master Stroke. Ava called a new press conference at the construction site, with the New York sun shining on the raw land. Attorney Grant was there, smirking, expecting the announcement of a legal battle. Ava walked up to the podium, the microphone glistening. "A week ago, the Compass Foundation faced an attempt at sabotage," Ava began, looking directly at Grant. "A maneuver of legal harassment to stall a project of dignity." The crowd stirred. Ava continued, never naming Marcus, but clearly pointing the finger at the culprits. "They wanted us to fight in court. They wanted us to pay a ransom. But I don't pay extortionists. I out-strategize them." She paused, and a large banner with the new design was unveiled behind her. "The Compass Microgrid Project. I announce today that the Haven project is not only not stalled, it is evolving. We have redesigned the complex to be a 100% self-sufficient energy microgrid. We don't need anyone's cables. We don't need anyone's property. And Mr. Grant, your client no longer has any leverage over our destiny." Ava looked at Grant, whose smirk had vanished. "In fact, the lot your client purchased, which blocked our original cabling, is now merely a dead-end, obsolete property with no access to the community renewable energy benefits we are creating." The crowd erupted in applause and cheers. Grant, defeated, turned and left, the figure of a well-deserved failure. Ava won the battle not with lawyers or money, but with the pure force of her creative genius. She had transformed the poison of vengeance into the catalyst for her greatest innovation. She had proven that the only way to escape a trap is to build an entirely new reality. Conclusion and final legacy. The Compass Microgrid project was completed 3 years later, a triumph of sustainable architecture and resilience. Ava was hailed not just for her spirit, but for her ability to innovate under extreme pressure. Marcus Thorne, still in jail, heard about the defeat. His final attempt at sabotage only served to finance and cement his ex-wife's legend. Ava Sterling Miller sat on the Haven's rooftop, looking out at the city, with Ethan beside her. "I thought the battle for pride ended with Marcus," Ava whispered. "His battle for pride ended. But yours, Ava, is the battle for legacy. And your legacy is proof that even a single mother, with nothing but a pen and an idea, can remodel the city and change the rules." She smiled. Her story, once marked by humiliation, was now a blueprint of hope. And you, what would you do if the poison of the past threatened your future? Would you pay it off or turn it into your biggest asset? Call to action. Comment below. If this story of ingenuity and survival inspires you, like this video and subscribe for more. Chapter 11. The Request from the Desert. The success of the Compass Foundations, the Haven Project, resonated far beyond U.S. borders. Ava's self-sufficient microgrid became a case study in universities and international forums. She was no longer Marcus Thorne's ex-wife. She was the visionary architect who proved that ethics was the best investment strategy. 7 years after the divorce was signed, Ava, now 42, was at the Foundation's NYC headquarters, an office full of light and blueprints. Nina, Grace, and Eli, now 10 years old, often came after school, doing their homework at a communal drafting table, learning about structure and sustainability. One afternoon, a high-level email landed on Ava's desk. It was from the government of the Republic of Mali, a West African country struggling with desertification and water scarcity. The request was ambitious and desperate. They needed the Compass Foundation to design a sustainable refugee city on the edge of the Sahara, a community that could house 50,000 people displaced by climate change, self-sufficient in both water and energy. The project was the antithesis of a luxurious skyscraper. It was a test of fire for the Foundation's principles. Ava shared the request with Ethan and Stella. "It's the opportunity we always wanted," Ava said, her eyes gleaming. "To apply the Haven's technology where it's needed most, the desert. We can use our solar panels and deep well water extraction technology." "The issue isn't the engineering, Ava," Ethan cut in, his voice grave. "The issue is geopolitics. The funding is coming from a United Arab Emirates consortium. Miller Holdings has brokered deals there before. They are strict, and the risk of the financing being tied to non-ethical interests is very high. The money isn't clean, Ava." Stella, the lawyer, nodded. "Also, the legal infrastructure in Mali is unstable. If we build there and the government shifts, we could lose the entire investment, and worse, compromise the community we build." Ava faced a dilemma far more complex than personal revenge. The risk was real. The humanitarian reward was immense. Interactive question. If you were Ava, would you take on a project with such high ethical and political risk, even if the humanitarian need is extreme? Or would you prioritize the Foundation's stability? Comment with your strategic choice. Chapter 12. The Desert Strategy and the Family Vote. Ava did not make an immediate decision. She took a week to study the geology, the politics, and, most importantly, the financial flow from the Emirates. She discovered that, indeed, most of the funding came from a holding company with shady connections to the water trade, whose real aim might be to control the country's subterranean water resources. "If we build the city, we give them access to those aquifers," Ava explained to Stella. "My water extraction technology would be their weapon. We cannot be complicit in water privatization." "So we decline?" Stella asked. "No," Ava said, her mind already in design mode. "We are going to do what we do best, redesign the trap." Ava's plan was so bold it required the approval of Ethan, and, symbolically, her children. the heart of her moral compass. Ava met with her triplets in the garden, under the jasmine pergola where she and Ethan were married. She showed them the blueprints of the Mali city. "Kids, this is the most important city I will ever build," Ava said. "But the bad guys want to use our water technology for their own gain. What do we do?" Nina, always the pragmatic one, spoke first. "If you don't give them the water, they don't need to come." Eli, the dreamer, looked at the drawing of the solar panels. "Mom, the sun belongs to everyone, not just them." Grace, the peacemaker, suggested, "Can we make the water, but make it so they can't steal it?" The answer was there, simple and brilliant, dictated by innocence. "You're right," Ava said, hugging them. "We are not going to build a microgrid for energy. We are going to build a distributed desalination macrogrid." The plan was this. The water would not be drawn from subterranean aquifers, but taken from the Atlantic Ocean and desalinated. The city would be designed not as an extraction point, but as a coastal generation line, using solar power to create potable water and pump it to inland communities in a decentralized way. The Foundation's technology would focus on production, not control. The refugee city would become a green belt of water production that defied the aquifer speculators. Ethan, listening to the idea, smiled proudly. "That is brilliant, Ava. You take away their raison d'etre, but you give them the need. They'll have to invest because they need to show the world they're helping, but you will control the technology." The Compass Foundation accepted the project, with one non-negotiable contract clause. The foundation would retain all intellectual property rights and operational control over the water infrastructure for the first 20 years. Chapter 13. The Legacy of the Dune and the Wave. The project in Mali, renamed Cloud City, was a monumental success. Ava spent the next few years traveling, facing heat, bureaucracy, and political instability with the same calm she used in the hospital when her children were born. She designed housing using traditional sand and salt building techniques, creating an oasis that was both modern and deeply rooted in local culture. The desalinisadora, powered by Eli's solar panels and built with Nina's geometric precision, became an engineering marvel. Grace, the peacemaker, oversaw the establishment of the schools and community centers. The legacy of the Compass Foundation was sealed in the desert. Ava had not just won her own battle. She had proven that her model of integrity worked on a global scale. And as for Marcus Thorne and Sienna Reed, the rumor of their collapse was a distant echo. Marcus, after his release, tried to rebuild, but his name was financial poison. Sienna, lost to social media irrelevance, couldn't find sponsors. The real ending for Ava came on a quiet day in Connecticut. Eli, now an architecture student, showed Ava the design for a new building that incorporated the desalinisadora. "I call it the bulwark, Mom," Eli said. "It's to protect the city from storms, but also from greed." Ava smiled. Her son had understood the lesson. "Your father told me that strength whispers, Eli." Ava took her son's hand. "But you and your mother have proven that sometimes the greatest strength is simply refusing to be complicit." The Compass Foundation had won the battle of water and fire. Ava Sterling Miller's legacy was cemented not in the luxurious apartments of Park Avenue, but in the sands of the Sahara, proving that the true measure of success is not what you take, but what you are willing to give without asking for anything in return. And you? Are you building a legacy of profit or integrity? What is it that you truly leave behind? Call to action. Drop your answer in the comments. If this story of an empire of integrity inspires you, like this video and subscribe for the next great adventure of the Compass Foundation. Chapter 14. The Fragility of Peace in Connecticut. 2 years after the completion of Cloud City, Ava and Ethan's life had found a deep stability. The Compass Foundation was on autopilot, with projects on 4 continents. and the triplets, now teenagers, were pillars of support and debate at home. The family had moved to a restored historic home in Greenwich, Connecticut, a place of serenity and old stones, away from the NYC bustle. It was a home built on truth, not fear. Yet, peace was fragile. One autumn afternoon, as Ava reviewed blueprints and Ethan read in the study, a letter arrived with an unfamiliar legal letterhead. It wasn't from Marcus Thorne. It was from the lawyers of a large Boston firm. The letter was addressed to Ethan Miller and informed him of the reopening of an old succession case involving his late first wife, Victoria. Victoria had tragically passed away in a car accident years ago, leaving Ethan shattered and silent, before Ava burst into his life on that midnight train. The letter revealed that, before her death, Victoria had been working on a secret charitable investment fund aimed at social justice projects in Boston, using a significant portion of her family inheritance. The problem was, the fund had never been legally constituted due to her death, and Victoria's family, embittered by grief and distrust toward Ethan, the billionaire who was never around, was fighting to liquidate the money, claiming Victoria was not mentally competent to make such decisions before the accident. Ethan's face paled, reading the letter. The pain Ava thought had healed returned, fresh and sharp. The fear that the world was once again questioning the integrity of someone he loved was unbearable. "They questioned her judgment, Ava," Ethan said, his voice barely a whisper. "They said she was obsessed with giving away the family inheritance and was unstable. It's the same game Marcus played with you, but this time I have no proof. I only had her word." The ghost of Victoria had returned, not to haunt their marriage, but to challenge the only foundation that mattered to Ethan, the truth he had failed to defend in the past. Chapter 15. The Call of Duty and the New Mission. Ava understood this wasn't a problem of money, or even legal justice. It was a debt of honor Ethan owed to the memory of the woman he couldn't protect. "Victoria believed in social justice. You believed in her," Ava said. "If her family is using their pain to taint her legacy, we have to use our legacy to defend her." Ava gathered her family team. The triplets, Nina, Grace, and Eli, sat with her and Ethan in the study, their faces serious. "This is a Compass Foundation project," Ava declared. "But it's a different battle. It's not for a building, but for a name." "And how do we fight a ghost, Mom?" asked Nina, the pragmatic one. "Ghosts are fought with facts, darling," Ava replied. "Eli and I can use the empathy index to analyze Victoria's communications in the months leading up to the accident. We want to know who she was giving her money to, why, and if the organizations were legitimate." "I'll do the groundwork," interrupted Grace, the architect. "If the money was meant for social justice in Boston, I'm going to Boston. I'll find the projects Victoria wanted to fund. A name on paper can be disproven. A building she believed in cannot." The plan was set. Ava's legacy had armed her children for the battle. Eli, the analyst, would use the empathy index, data analysis, to prove Victoria's rational intent and mental competence. Grace, the architect, would use architecture to prove the tangible intent and legitimacy of the projects. Ava, the strategist, would use the legal strategy to coordinate the counterattack, just as Stella Davies had taught her. Chapter 16. The Architecture of Intent. The trip to Boston was a pilgrimage. Grace, with her talent for finding the underlying structure, searched the poorer neighborhoods where Victoria had been doing volunteer work. Within a week, Grace found the proof. Rudimentary architectural plans and emails from Victoria, with a small community organization trying to convert a derelict warehouse into a training center and daycare. Victoria had not just planned to donate money. She had been personally involved in the initial design. "Victoria wasn't crazy, Dad," Grace called Ethan, her voice emotional. "She was building. She saw the need and was addressing it with a sound plan." Simultaneously, Eli and Ava in Connecticut found the final evidence in the data. Victoria's emails with her lawyer, with timestamps and meticulous financial details, proving she had finalized the trust documents hours before the accident, just when her family alleged she was unstable. Armed with the truth and the intent, Ava returned to the lawyers. She confronted Victoria's family's attorneys, not with Miller Holdings documents, but with the blueprints and the empathy index data. Your lawsuit is not against Ethan. It is against the legacy of your own daughter, Ava declared. We have found the proof of her mental competence, the proof of her intent, and the proof of the legitimacy of her projects. We have reconstructed the architecture of her generosity. Victoria's family, unable to counter the facts and ashamed by the exposure of their own greed, withdrew. Victoria's fund was released, and the money was immediately invested in the Boston Community Center and other social justice projects, just as she had planned. Ethan, released from the guilt he had carried for years, embraced Ava. You saved me from Marcus, Ava, and you gave me Nina, Grace, and Eli. But today, you saved me from a ghost. You helped me defend the woman I loved when she could no longer defend herself. Ava smiled, looking at her children, who were packing Grace's suitcase for her return to college. The true foundation, darling, is integrity. And that we build together. Epilogue to final. The unbreakable inheritance, Ava and Ethan Miller, the two who met on a broken-down subway at midnight, proved that love is the only true test of fire. Their legacy was not just wealth, technology, or skyscrapers. It was the unbreakable compass of integrity they instilled in their children. The legacy of the Sterling Miller family is not defined by a last name, but by the daily choice to fight for those who are silenced. And you? What is the ghost from your past that you still need to exercise to secure your peace? Are you using your power to build or to demolish? Call to action. Leave your reflection in the comments. If this story of love, redemption, and justice has moved you, like this video and subscribe for the next adventure of the Compass Foundation.